And we're actually live. This is a pre-show recording. So just to tell you that stay tuned. Rachel is going to give us a fantastic presentation. And Dr. Shealy and myself will jump in as we go along. This is part 2 following on the thyroid conversation. And thyroid is a very important organ. We're going to learn all about it. So we're going to
learn more than we did last time. And also, if you're just tuning in, we are not actually starting for two more minutes. You're getting a little inside peek at the pregame show.
Oh yeah. Well, this is going to be a blast.
Yeah, Dr. Shealy and I were having a great conversation about gardening, and he's going to start that next month. It sounds like, yeah. And I'm gonna, fingers crossed, try to grow some tomato plants that I can give him the starters.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
It'll be a really interesting experiment because I have a brown thumb, but working on fixing that. Well,
let's make it green. Dr. Shealy's got that.
There you go. Dr.
Gift.
Shealy does have the green thumb, so I'm hoping it rubs off on me.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, I think we're going to start in a few minutes officially, and so stay tuned.
Yes. Yeah. And
testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Just want everyone to have that extra 60 seconds if they don't want anyone to feel like they're missing anything, but also it's always fun to get a little bit behind the scenes and
yep.
Mm-hmm. So. All right. Yeah, I think we're probably good to go. Okay.
And I believe we're officially on. Rachel.
Okay. So, go for it.
Yeah. So a brief introduction about the topic and the concept and everything we're doing. Today is going to be an amazing, incredible show. Last Wednesday we had a Wellness Wednesday focused on thyroid. We talked about the medical aspects, how it plays and corresponds to everything in the body, every organ system, every cell, every function, literally. Well, Rachel, take it away.
Okay, well, so we were talking about every organ system, every function. So before we get into thyroid, I want to have a little bit of a rant first. Are you guys
Please.
Okay with that? If I have a rant? Okay. Preventative medicine. We are here and we can help you. There are so many times when people get their thyroids cut out, get their gallbladders cut out, get their uteruses cut out, get their ovaries cut out. Guys, those organs are there for a reason, and we can help you keep them. Yes. I understand that sometimes things happen and there are some people that it's just going to be that situation, but there's so many that we can help you grow old and healthy and whole all the same time, or should I say grow young?
With all the grow young as we get older. And so the idea is keep your organs, keep your cells, keep your health, keep your wellness. We get older, my God, there's no reason not to feel better.
Let's go into our golden years, feeling golden, feeling wonderful.
Yes.
And something else that came to my realization the other day is some people really truly want that, but they're not taught how. We don't know. We don't get good nutrition education. We don't get good medication education. Dr. Shealy had to be quite the pioneer in that field. Correct?
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I would say expanding a little bit from a neurosurgery background and lots of discoveries on dorsal cord stimulator, TENS unit to nutrition and to wellness. Well, that's a really important jump because you know what? This is holism. This is what this is all about.
And again, if you're not sure how to do it, seek help. It can be us. It doesn't have to be us. Find somebody that you trust, someone that is living proof that you can live a healthy life.
And I have a personal experience with thyroid. My mother was hyperthyroid when she was pregnant with me. And in 1980, I had hyperthyroidism. And it evolved into hypothyroidism. So I am on thyroid release replacement medication, the real thing, Armour's thyroid. And I checked the blood test yesterday, but I don't know the result tonight.
Yeah, too bad the timing.
Right.
we'll know for next time, right?
And if we let's remember to mention that in the beginning of the next show, just
Right.
the follow-up.
Yeah, people will want to know.
Wonderful.
Yeah, great. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead, and I've put together, I like to back things up, back, to make it really fundamental so we can all understand why good nutrition is so important for the thyroid. So let's start with the first slide that I've got. Of course, supporting the thyroid. So if we look at how do we support the thyroid, let's go back and look at what is the thyroid, where is the thyroid, in case you were wondering. It's this beautiful little butterfly-shaped gland wrapped around your windpipe. So now you know where it is, you know what it looks like. Okay, so the role of the thyroid, Dr. Sorin and Dr. Shealy talked quite a bit about last time, but we know it tells your body when to consume oxygen and nutrients. It gets the heart pumping. It tells cells at what rate to break down nutrients. And of course, when we need more energy, the thyroid's going to send out our hormones to increase that metabolism. So essentially, I like people to think of the thyroid as your metabolism control center. Okay, so this is where we start getting a little bit into the nutrition. I put on here thyroid cells are the only cells in the body. That's a little bit of hyperbole, but I want you to know that iodine is really, really crucial for thyroid cells.
Thyroid.
And so the thyroid's job is to take that iodine and an amino acid, and just to back up to that, an amino acid is what proteins are made out of. So this is a very particular amino acid, tyrosine, and it's going to take the iodine and the tyrosine and, combine it, and we're going to end up with thyroxine, which is T4. And then I'm sure I'm going to say this word wrong.
That's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Triiodothyronine.
Okay, that's what I like to call it, but then I'm like, oh man, I'm going to say it out loud. And
I think I said that with a Russian accent.
Okay, good
Yes.
job. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know iodine is important for the cell. And what we look at is when we see these T4 and T3 getting released from the thyroid gland, they're going to travel throughout the bloodstream bound to thyroid binding proteins. There's a couple different ones. One that we'll talk about just briefly a little bit later is thyroxine binding globulin. But if you listened last week, you'll remember Dr. Sorin and Dr. Shealy talking about bound, T4, bound T3 versus free. And so this is part of that. They have to detach so they can then attach to cellular receptors. Okay. I'm giving you this little picture. So now we're going to talk about T3 and T4. And then this next picture is going to help really break it down for you guys so you understand at a fundamental level. If you look at this picture, there are three, what color would you say that is? Purple?
I'd say purple, yeah.
Okay. There are three purple molecules. Those are iodine molecules. So now it's probably making sense why we call it T3, 3 iodine molecules. All right. Some of you have probably already guessed why we call it T4, because there are 4 iodine molecules. So we've got our T3 and our T4. And then they talked a little bit last week about reversed T3. So that is T3, but instead of the iodine molecule being, so if you look at the top there, you can see regular T3. It's over there on that right-hand side. And if you look at the right-hand side, reverse T3, the iodine is on the other side. So it's like, I think a good analogy would be like gloves, like a right and a left hand. And when it's reverse T3, it can't,
it's a placeholder basically.
Yeah.
But in other words, it acts like a thyroid molecule, like a T3 molecule, but it's inactive. So that means that cell is not being acted on by thyroid.
Yeah, so it's binding to the cell, but it's not, the cell's not getting any messages. So that's kind of where we struggle with that problem. So that's
and I do want to mention the body is very smart about this. And if that's happening, there's usually a reason why. And that reason is that, that's why we get into the clinicals, and that's why we get into the causes of thyroid issues. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself.
Yes, but yeah, you are
Way ahead of myself.
But
please
we
go
will
ahead.
come. We'll circle back to that.
Yes, ma'am.
So I know this is just a text-heavy slide. I do apologize for that. I promise there's a picture next. But so we need to think about, well, we know that we've got the thyroid hormone. We know it needs to make T4 and T3, but what's telling the thyroid to do what it's doing? So if we kind of reverse engineer this, we have thyroid stimulating hormone, what we call TSH. That is released by our anterior pituitary gland. That's what signals the thyroid to produce T3 and T4. But if we go one step further back in our reverse engineering process, we have thyrotropin releasing hormone, which is what the hypothalamus releases and tells the pituitary to release TSH. So if you look at this next slide with the picture, that will help, I think, kind of give a much better idea. So hypothalamus is releasing the thyrotropin, and then it is telling the pituitary to release thyroid stimulating hormone, which then tells the thyroid to produce the T3 and the T4. Why does all of this matter? You guys are like, I did not need an anatomy lesson. I promise I'm going somewhere with this. Promise. Okay. So when we look at these parts of our body, so this part of our brain and this other gland, they need support, right? They can't do their job without the proper nutrients. You always hear Dr. Shealy and Dr. Sorin preaching vitamin C. There's a reason for that. And then a B complex. And if we look at just some of the nutrients needed for these body parts, we know we need B1 and we need B12. And then, of course, we also need our omega-3s. So before we even get to the thyroid, we need to be supporting those other parts of the body, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And the reason how that works is the body works in unison. And one of the things that we talked about is that there's organ systems, but there's also systems within systems. And when one system is malfunctioning, we talked about that. You have to, from a functional, holistic perspective, you have to always go back and see why would that be happening? Why is the body adapting in that fashion? And how do you make that adaptation better, so to speak?
Yeah, the analogy I always like to use is I think of a river, right? And the upstream, what up here is it impacting all the downstream pieces? I don't know. Does that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually, thyroid is one of the upstream pieces on a lot of different aspects.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Okay. And this is just, this isn't as important to understand, but the thyroid does have like a feedback loop, right? So if we have too little T3 and T4, then it'll tell, let's create some more of that. And if there's too much, then it will back off. So yeah.
I'd like to jump in here briefly. And Dr. Shealy, if you have something to say about this, I know you got a lot to say about this. Feel free to come in on the conversation. When TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, is elevated, when it's high, that means thyroid function is low. When it's TSH is low, it means thyroid function is on a higher end. How does that make sense? This is what we're talking about, by the feedback loops. In other words, when the TSH, well, let's say there's not enough T3 and T4, there's not enough end product. It sends a feedback signal to the upstream, so to speak, and TSH is one of the ways to increase the production. And now, if you have too much, you want to send the feedback loop above saying, hey, shut it down, too much for now. And then you see where it is thereafter. But please, yeah.
So the thing about, so we have that whole feedback loop, but then when we talk about the actual production of T3 and T4, like, why do we care about each number? How does it matter? What's the big deal, right? Okay. When your thyroid gland is making T3 and T4, most of it is T4, which we can't really use, right? That doesn't do a good job it doesn't bind to the cells. It doesn't give us the right signals, okay? So we produce a little bit of T3 in the thyroid, about 6%. So we've got this big, huge amount of T4 like, what are we going to do with it, right? So obviously the body is very brilliant. It has a plan. It's the design. So what does this mean? Well, it means that T4 that is released by the thyroid has to find a way to become T3. How does it do that? It loses an iodine molecule, correct?
Indeed.
Well, so how do we lose an iodine molecule? Well, the way we lose that is by an enzyme. Well, actually, there are several. There's at least 3 that we know of. I always say that we know of because I feel like we're learning more every day.
Every day,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So they're called deiodinases. I'm probably butchering that word too. So if you
Well
care
said.
about the word, we'll figure it out later. Okay. So those enzymes are going to convert T4 to T3. These enzymes also need to be supported nutritionally. But before we get to the nutrition piece of supporting those enzymes, let's talk about where a lot, not all, but a lot of this conversion happens. Where does T4 to T3 conversion happen? I feel like we talk about the liver a lot.
Yes.
And there's a reason for that. It's a very, very metabolically active organ. Okay. So if you are not taking good care of your liver, then conversion processes aren't going to be happening the way they should. Now, we also know it happens in some other places like your heart, your muscles. Again, we talk a lot about the gut on this show because some of the conversion happens in the gut and through healthy gut bacteria. But I want to talk just a second about so many people say, I take care of my liver, I do all the things. And then you ask that I literally just had a client their food looked wonderful. And then I said, what'd your drinking look like for the week? And it was a little more alcohol than it should have been. And so I want people to know when we're drinking more alcohol than we should, I'm not talking about your 1 glass of wine. If you go home and you drink 2 or 3 beers every night or 2 or 3 glasses of wine, or you're a weekend social drinker, but you don't know the right moderation, alcohol really does impair the ability of the rest of our body to function correctly. So it reduces the ability of the stomach wall to make stomach acid.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we need stomach acid to keep bacteria out, to process our food correctly, all of these things. It also damages the gut lining. So then with our gut lining damaged, we can't absorb the nutrients that we need. So then we become deficient in things like B vitamins, vitamin A, and it also impacts the liver's ability to dispose of like old neurotransmitters, old hormones. So let's really take care of our liver. I'm sorry, I'm ranting again. I know.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, somebody's got to.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay. So now we'll circle back to the enzymes. So I put this little picture here because I think enzymes are cool. They're like so magical. They either put little pieces together or they break them apart, right? And so the enzymes that we need for this are going to, as we discussed, break apart an iodine molecule from the T4 and turn it into T3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we need very specific nutrients for this to work. These enzymes need selenium. Okay, so if we don't have selenium, it can't necessarily do its job the way it should. Selenium has a few other roles too, and one of those roles is as we are, processing things, we release substances. One of those is hydrogen peroxide, which if it's not kind of neutralized, then that becomes its own sort of oxidative damage. And we also need selenium to neutralize this. So that's another reason this mineral is so important. And that's done through when we talk about glutathione peroxidases. So they also require selenium.
Actually, in the body, there are several very important reactions. One is hydroxylation, another is methylation. And a lot of both of these occur in the liver, actually, well, among other things. And that's what it takes for the body to function. Without the nutrients, without the building blocks, well, it's like having a Lego set without Lego pieces.
Right. We're missing the fundamentals. So there are some other factors that prevent conversion of T4 to T3. We talked about the selenium. Zinc is also another mineral that those enzymes need. I didn't talk a whole lot about it, but it is something you need for that conversion process. And then something else, chronic stress. And that can be, a lot of times that's some form of inflammation in the body. So that, you need to figure out where it's coming from in order to address that. Okay, so I don't want to give you all this stuff without giving you some action steps, right? If you're healthy and young and you just want to be able to take care of your thyroid, here are some foods that are really high in selenium, so give you those nutrients. Brazil nuts are crazy high in them, so you don't have to eat a ton of them. But you're going to see some commonalities in the foods that we talk about. But yes, also fish, beef liver, eggs, brown rice, sunflower seeds. There are more, but those are just to give people a starting point. And then, since I did very briefly talk about zinc, some good sources of zinc, you're going to see fish pop up again. Beef, again, that's like the liver and stuff. That's a good source. Eggs, I did put some plant foods on there, but do know when you are eating plant foods and you're trying to pull minerals from them, plants are brilliantly designed, and they have this thing called phytic acid to protect them, which makes some of the nutrients not as available to you, and zinc is one of them. So yes, you can get your nutrients from that. They're not as bioavailable though. So you need to soak or sprout or, help that along a little bit. Okay, some other factors that prevent conversion, a diet high in sugars and processed carbohydrates, antibiotic use, again, because we're wiping out all the gut bacteria, and some of that conversion happens in the gut. And then, of course, you can see the picture up there that we have. That's leaky gut. So, if things aren't all tight and connected how they're supposed to be, that can also cause some conversion issues.
Just a real quick jumping in here. Leaky gut is a huge issue. It's the gut is protected by a single layer of cells. Single layer. That's all you get. If there's inflammation, if there's space between them, if if the toxins get through the gut barrier, through the liver, through the immune system, then it settles in the organs. It settles in the joints, in the liver, in the organs, in the heart, in the brain. That's where a lot of chronic illnesses come in. So this is a major, major issue. Thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, and so like you said, it's a major issue because it can impact thyroid, but
everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, and if I'm not mistaken, thyroid disorders will affect the gut. So
yeah,
it's a two-way street.
Relationship. So, yeah. And so I did want to, especially since this is kind of my little area specialty, blood sugar that is too high can impact this. And then I put elevated insulin levels because the elevated insulin, it impacts the activity of those enzymes that we were just talking about. So anytime we're not taking good care of our blood sugar, let me back up on this. You can have really wonderful blood sugar numbers, but we see this a lot with labs. You can have very high fasting insulin, which tells us you're on the trajectory, but your body's working really, really hard right now to keep you from going down that path. So yeah.
Usually, this is why when we draw labs, comprehensive labs, it's not just hemoglobin A1C, it's not just chemistry with a sugar number, it's fasting insulin. You want to know precursors. You want to know down the line, years before it happens.
Absolutely. And so we know, lots of studies have looked at that fact that diabetes, elevated insulin, metabolic syndrome, which kind of that goes hand in
with
hand.
Thyroid as well.
Yeah. But they've all demonstrated that they can have a significant impact on the conversion of T4 to T3. So yeah. Okay, but there's a lot of other things that can disrupt our thyroid, and some of these we talk about quite a bit on here. Low dietary iodine. Well, it kind of all makes sense now. I think now that people have seen, oh, look, T4, T3, it's all about the iodine, right? So if we're not getting enough in our diet, that could be a problem. we do talk a lot about fluoride and how toxic that is. I think most people have a pretty good idea about chlorine. So you may be looking at this thinking, well, I don't drink fluoridated water. I don't drink in chlorinated pools, but what the heck is bromine, right? So let's talk a little bit about bromine. All right. Sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. Before we talk about bromine, let's talk about all three of these and what do they have in common. If you want to totally geek out, okay, or I don't know, maybe it's cool, whatever, I think it's cool. But we're going to look at a periodic chart, right? And if we look at this, bromine, chlorine, fluoride, and iodine are all part of the halogen family, okay? So we know that the thyroid is the organ that's taking up the iodine. But when we are exposed to other substances like bromine, chlorine, and fluoride, the thyroid doesn't know not to take up those in place of the iodine. So this can cause all kinds of problems because now you have a molecule that, again, it's not doing its job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not sending the right messages.
And I'm just going to jump in here real quick. So when we have people come to us, and Rachel sees this all the time as well, with normal thyroid blood labs and blood work, TSHs, for example, within normal limits, so that the primary care or the endocrinologist says, you're okay, you're fine, but you're still having problems, skin, hair, energy, mood, brain function, it's just not right. Guess what? Just because the TSH is within normal limits doesn't mean you're okay because of that.
Yeah, lots of other things to consider. Yes. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk a little bit about bromine because this goes back to, I don't think people are told, we're not educated about these things in school. They don't even know this in school. This is we have to really dig around and figure out what do they do to our food and what do they do to our water and all the things. So where are we exposed to bromine? And I think this is going to surprise a lot of people, but pretty much most of your wheat products, not all, because sometimes some places have really backed away from this when it kind of became more well-known. But bromine, known, if you look at the ingredients, a lot of times it will say potassium bromate, is in your cookies, crackers, your bread, your pizza crust, your wheat tortillas, your bagels, your buns, your pancakes, your biscuits, your French toast. What am I forgetting? Anything else? Junk food. Yes. Food. It's in actually, yes, that's perfect because that segues to my next slide, which continues with that theme. So the other place we will see this is in some generic soft drinks, and that instead of saying potassium bromate will say brominated vegetable oil. It's in some sports drinks and it's in some energy drinks. So any of these kind of junk foods, because that's what they are, that uses like a citrus flavoring, there's a very good chance they will use this oil. You know what? And also, let me explain too, why do they put that in our bread? Why do they put this in our soft drinks? Soft drinks, my understanding is to help with the separation and the citrus. I don't know, I'm not a food chemist, but I know with the bread, what they used to use was iodine as a dough conditioner. And then they switched over to using potassium bromate as a dough conditioner. So that's why it's in the food. Okay, well, so let's talk about, if we want to support our thyroid, we want to not be exposed to this, right? So the first step is cut out all those foods. Honestly, I would say most of the processed wheat products you're eating are not doing you any favor. Well, they're not doing you any favors.
Well, as Dr. Shealy would say, crap is crap, I think.
I love that about Dr. Shealy.
Yeah.
he just calls it like it is. Right. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Junk is junk.
Yep, that's right. It is. Of course, one of the other ways is to make sure you're getting, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go back. That was just, is to make sure you're getting adequate amounts of iodine in your diet. We'll talk a little bit about food supply for that. Again, this is why these gentlemen are always preaching vitamin C. And then, of course, anything that's going to get us movement and that kind of stuff and sweating, exercise, sauna, anything like that. I mean, really just think healthy lifestyle. Eat real whole food, move. Yeah.
I will say this. when it comes to getting things in a better place, I have not seen anyone improve on a regular, steady, good basis consistently without addressing the basics, without addressing the lifestyle, without addressing nutrition, movement, sleep, rest, stress management, weight, the basics, the essentials.
And the worst is fluoride.
In the world.
Oh,
It's
yep, we're gonna.
Poison, period.
You read my mind. That's where we are. So yeah, that's another piece. But yeah, we got it. But you're right. Like supplements are wonderful, and most of us need them. But if that's all you're going to do, they can't.
It's going to be a hard journey.
Yeah, it's going to be a slow going. Okay, so we know that fluoride, we're exposed to that in a lot of our water supply. So of course, Dr. Shealy.
Well, drinking fluoridated water is poison, period, in the report.
Yeah, no further information needed. But now you know why, because that fluoride can take the place of the iodine, and we don't want that, right? Same with the chlorine. So that's a big deal. Okay. So something else to think about as Dr. Shealy is preaching, fluoride and how horrible it is. It's in a lot of medications. I mean, a lot. So you really, if this is something you're concerned about, you should be checking your antacids, your antibiotics, some of the statins, your antihistamines, I'm not saying it's in every single one of these, but you may check if you're on these.
And that is why Dr. Shealy taught me to get rid of all the drugs as much as possible. A person comes in on stomach, protection pills or antacids and unnecessary antibiotics. Well, here's the answer. Let's just talk about it. Instead of antacids, improve the stomach health.
That's a whole topic too.
Oh God! Instead of antibiotics, improve your immune system.
Yes.
Cholesterol. Let's work on metabolism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's a man before his time. He is a man before his time. Okay.
Still is, by the way.
100%. Yeah. He's an inspiration for us all.
Oh
for
God,
sure.
yes.
Okay. So a lot of you guys are probably thinking, well, we get iodine in our table salt, right? Isn't my table salt iodized? Before I get into the crap of table salt, because I get to see Dr. Shealy over here being like, before I get into that, though, let's just look at this, okay? So this is way back in 1969 when they started, I guess, changing this over from using iodine in your bread to using potassium bromate. So what they did is they're trying to figure out how much of this your body can actually use. So they had a salt group, table salt group, and a bread group, okay? And they both ingested the same amount of iodine. They expected from this ingestion that their serum levels would be about the same, 17.2 micrograms per liter. But that was absolutely not the case. So if you look at this, they expected them to look equal, but what we see is the iodine in the bread was very bioavailable, and the iodine in the salt really wasn't. It does a good enough job. We get just enough of it that we don't get giant goiters, and that's about it. So
it sucks.
Yes, it does. Yes. So table salt sucks. Thank you for that. That's perfect. That's where we are. We know conventional table salt that you're getting at the restaurant or in your processed food, or if that's what you're buying at the store, it's been heated. All those trace minerals that your body needs, I believe there are like 72. They've been taken out. We've had anti-caking agents added to it. Those contain toxic substances on their own, often like aluminum. So if you're going to do salt, my personal, if for iodine is like a Redmond sea salt, but there are many other natural salts you can use. I don't know if you gentlemen have an opinion on that, or
Himalayan salt is good.
Himalayan is another good option. And then I also like Celtic sea salt, if that's something. Yeah.
Actually, the sea salt is probably one of the best options that I recommend in general.
Yeah. So, I mean, any of those are good. Just stay away from the table salt. That stuff is toxic. Yeah. So, again, tools. I want you to know, well, where can you get iodine? I told you where to avoid the bromine, right? So iodine, again, I think we're seeing a theme here. Seafood, okay? It's cod, sea bass, perch, salmon, haddock, sardines, seaweed. A lot of people are concerned about mercury, and I absolutely understand that.
But let me just jump in on that. There's organic and inorganic mercury. And the organic mercury, which is found in the fish, not to say that you want to have a huge amount of that, but that's not nearly as bad as the inorganic, which is literally a poison. If one had to choose between a moderate amount of fish intake with a concern of mercury exposure versus the benefits in terms of protein, in terms of omega-3s, iodine. Now, obviously, if it's coming from a certain place where you're concerned about radioactivity with certain things, that's one thing. But fish is generally a still good option.
And just to ease people's mind, if everything you just said didn't help, if that didn't help ease their mind, a great choice, a little bit unpopular choice, but a great choice is sardines because they are a low mercury fish. They don't live that long. They're too small. And they just don't have time to absorb it. Okay. And also it's really cool because they are always wild caught. They are too fragile to sustainably farm. So you're not getting a farmed fish if that is a concern. So we've got our our sea options, seafood options. And then of course, so we live in the Midwest, which actually used to be sorry. I'm trying to say known and goiter at the same time.
Yes.
Known as the goiter belt because our soil doesn't have as much iodine. So I have on here that you can get it from dairy products and meat and eggs, but you have to trust that your farmer is supplementing the animals with those minerals. And I was at the feed store the other day because that's what I do for fun. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, you have a farm.
I do have a farm, so it doesn't sound as weird as it just sounded.
Yes.
And I was looking at all the mineral supplementations, and most of them do have iodine in them, so they know. It's a pretty standard practice, I would say.
I would, Dr. Shealy, would you say that most farmers take better care of their animals than most doctors take care of their humans?
Absolutely.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But highly farmed animals are not good.
Agreed. Yes. You want farmed animals that have lived how they were supposed to live.
Right.
Yeah.
Free range as possible. And
and fed the proper nutrients and, real food and all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Okay. So some other thyroid disruptors. So we talked about the bromine, we talked about the fluoride, we talked about the chlorine. Estrogen dominance can also be a thyroid disruptor. So estrogen increases the creation or synthesis of thyroxine binding globulin, which that means that not only does it increase the synthesis, but it makes it live longer in essence. So when it's bound, remember, we can't use it when it's bound. So the estrogen is causing a whole imbalance there. And I don't know if you want to.
Inactivates literally it takes the active soldiers, active agents, and then it just literally just makes them inactive. Now, the other thing is, part of this practice is working with the hormones, working with I would say there's a triad of regulatory components in the body that controls literally everything, and that's hormones, including sex hormones. I will throw in stress hormones in there, DHEA, cortisol, and we measure that as well. But then there is also the thyroid. And the thyroid and the gut and the estrogen and progesterone and testosterone and all these things, they interplay absolutely without a fail. There is we talked about systems within systems within systems. So when something is not right or something is off, instead of just looking at that one system and fixing that system, you have to look at the whole body. And why is that system doing that? Because it's adjusting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'm just completely agreeing with that and saying this is why we do these types of functional medicine testing. And I feel like Dr. Shealy was doing this way before it became popular. So, the first one on there, hair, nails, urine, blood, you can look at your selenium status. Some's going to give you a better picture than other. Hair is probably going to give you a more long-term view. I know Dr. Sorin uses the Dutch test quite a bit, so that can tell us about estrogen. And also
Metabolites.
Yes,
Yeah.
how you are metabolizing the
And
estrogen.
not just estrogen. It gives you the estrogen metabolism. It gives you progesterones. It gives you testosterone. What's happening in those pathways. It also gives you the stress cascade, DHEA versus cortisol. It gives you toxicity. It literally talks about what's happening. Are you methylating properly? Are you hydroxylating properly? Those are the type of in the liver and otherwise reactions that convert properly or improperly into ratios that are either good for you or not good for you, dangerous or not dangerous.
So I think it's really good to be able to, I like to call it, take a peek under the hood, right? And see what's going on. And I want my mechanic to peek under the hood. I don't necessarily have to understand everything that's going on, but I want to know that he does and that he can tell me what to do to fix it.
And thank you. And this is exactly where this is, because people sometimes look really great. I've had several people who look fantastic, didn't look like they should have any medical issues, and yet diabetic, hypertensive, cholesterol, even heart, vascular, strokes, all the kidney, renal issues. When you are in a situation like that, you really have to ask yourself, what's going on under the hood, as you said, because sometimes there's good-looking cars that basically don't run. And there are some terrible looking cars that run very well. That's it's best to have both, of course.
But it's great to be a well-oiled machine in general. And just to kind of course, the most important thing, at least from my perspective, and I think these gentlemen would agree, is learn how to take care of yourself properly and learn how to do prevention. May put us out of a job. I don't know, but
I would love it if people were so well taken care of that we didn't have to have a job. Yes. I mean, I would love that.
So, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I'm like, and if you're not sure what to do, I actually had someone tell me the other day, I realize I want to eat healthy, but I don't know how. And why would they know how? Like, nobody is taught that. You have to really take a deep dive on your own to figure all that out. So again, if you want to be healthy, you're not sure how, reach out, get help. We're here. There are plenty of other people that know how to do that. Okay, so that is the end of my slideshow. I think we may be ready for some questions.
Wonderful.
Unknown caller.
He's popular all around.
Never mind that. Well, never mind that. Okay, that was terrible. Okay.
Okay.
So let's. But it's a wonderful break opportunity to get into the questions. So
we've got a few. So
we got a few. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's read a few out loud. And actually, between the three of us, let's see how we want to answer.
Okay.
So what's the first question there that we have? Let's see.
Do you know, Kale? Do you want to read us the question?
Actually,
we can see them. Do you want to read them? Okay.
I'll read them.
Okay.
Do you know if ethylene oxide is dangerous to our health? I used to work at a warehouse that sterilized medical supplies, and they said there was no cause for concern. Ethylene oxide as an agent. Are you familiar with that?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's something that I would have to look up and just see what that is. But actually, let me just
write
take
it down.
Do research on it.
Mm-hmm.
And stay tuned for the next program, next podcast. We should hopefully talk about that and give you an answer on that. Now, off the top of my head, there's a lot of metabolic poisons, and ethylene oxide sounds like as a molecule, very similar to a lot of the industrial solvents.
Indeed.
That will actually work
It sounds potentially dangerous.
Disruptors, especially if it's got something in common with the ethylene ring and otherwise in the human body. So I would say 90% not good. But we'll certainly get back to you on that. We try not to make any statements without proper information. Another question. Thank you for this. Can nodules be arrested or shrunken? Let's talk about nodules. Let's talk about why the body develops thyroid nodules. So let's say if you're not producing enough in terms of the function, the body is actually smart. it's going to want to do something to balance that. So it's going to produce more tissue, thinking that it will probably produce more tissue, more substrate, better chances. So to build stuff. Now, downside is it's not effective. So now you got a big, bulky thyroid now, which can develop into other issues and complications. So usually it's just a mass effect and discomfort. But the bottom line is it's a dysfunctional thyroid. Get it working again. Get the thyroid, in other words, get rid of the poisons, get rid of the disruptors, and start taking proper supplements, nutrition, give the thyroid what it needs. Chances are we're going to do well. What do you think?
Well, the question is, I saw one thyroid so large is equal to the size of your head.
Gotcha.
In the operating room.
Wow.
So don't let it get this big before
Taking
action.
Yeah, again, let's go back to prevention. And if you notice it's getting a little big, like,
Right.
yeah, don't wait.
Tiny little nodule may be reversed.
Yep, and we're talking about reversal non-surgically, because people, when think of nodules, they think it has to be cut out. Well, what's going to happen is you cut that out, you're going to form another nodule, and another nodule, and another nodule. Why? Because there's a physiological drive for the thyroid to produce more substrate.
Optimize your thyroid function first.
That's right. That's right. And if you're starting to have an early phases, including symptoms, including skin, let's talk about some of the symptoms. Thin skin, thinning, losing hair, low energy, spare tire, depression, lots of metabolic disorders. So whenever I see somebody with hypertension, diabetes, or cholesterol, I always check to see what the thyroid is doing, because without a fail, there's going to be an issue.
And what about, so, a lot of times, so when we get labs from other places, sometimes we see, they have the TSH on there, and even the free T3 and the free T4.
Sometimes,
not always. Yeah, sometimes it happens. Sometimes we see it, but then sometimes you still have people with thyroid problems. And so some of the other pieces that you test for, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh,
because
absolutely,
100%.
So when I do thyroid testing, and it's a perfect case well, today I had a patient client who gave me his comprehensive labs from another provider. Now, comprehensive meaning they did okay for as far as a standard, but it's just to illustrate. So the panel included TSH, nothing else. What is missing here is free T3, free T4, reverse T3, which is the ratio, active versus inactive. We want to know what the body is doing. And if it's creating more inactive, then the question is, why is it doing so? We have to ask those questions. And this is where it becomes a question of which organ system is primarily involved. Is it the gut? Is it the hormones? Is it the thyroid itself? Is it stress? Is it prolonged illness? Is it stress? Again, is it a mental emotional stressors? Is it the drugs? Is it supplement? Is it lack of supplements? Is it lack of nutrition? Lots of different things, again, but you have to get to the root cause, because otherwise you just be bouncing around with one thyroid medication and changing doses forever and ever.
Well, and then also sometimes, let's just say all of that's normal. I've seen you also test for antibodies, right?
That's 100%. So thyroid, autoimmune thyroid is a major issue, and let's say you have antibody to TSH receptor or peroxidase or something called TPO. This is again part of the panel that I usually get, and especially if a person has any other autoimmune diseases. But if they're having a hard time balancing their thyroid, or the numbers are looking okay, but they're not feeling well, something's going on. You always treat the person. You don't. You look at the number as a cofactor, but you don't treat the number. I've never seen that be any success.
You can't say, "Oh, your numbers look fine." Oh, you don't feel fine, but your numbers look fine, so you're fine. I mean, that's insane.
Excuse me.
God bless you. Yeah, unfortunately, that's what people do. They treat the numbers. Hey, Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith, your TSH is within normal limits. Your thyroid is fine. Look somewhere else. Nope, we haven't looked further enough.
Yeah. And I think that's important too for patients to know that they have to be their own best advocate.
The one thing that I'm going to say, if you are a patient, as you are a patient, and if you're not getting good answers from your physician, find somebody else to talk to, maybe second opinion. I'm not saying that's a bad doctor, but maybe they don't have all the expertise or all the knowledge basically related to what's going on. Because if you're not feeling well, if you don't feel good, and your lab numbers are okay or within range, that range, the numbers, range literally means it's an average of everybody who is sick and healthy. And they throw it in, and basically, if you're in the low range of the normal, where you're supposed to be higher up, that means you're hypofunction, you're low flow functioning. It's a very small drop from there, very short trip from there to disease state. Please.
Right. And, you need to shop carefully. And interestingly, in Springfield, the shop is Spring Valley.
That's one of our favorite stores here.
It's got most of our products and service. They don't look for 10,000 items to find one essential.
And plus, carry all the favorites: essentials, youth formula, magnesium, bliss oils, lots of good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Many of the nutrients needed to support healthy hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid.
Oh God, the entire system. I mean, yeah. And also, Dr. Shealy, one of your other favorites, if I'm not mistaken, is tart cherry juice concentrate.
Yes. Cherry juice concentrate I've taken for 30 years. It's an excellent additive.
And especially if you don't get your veggies, fruits and veggies, because fruits and veggies, I mean, that's what allows you the pH of the body to be proper.
Right.
That's what allows the nutrition supplements, in other words, or nutrients. And one of the statements is, if the food is not thy medicine is going to become thy food. In other words, you're going to have so much in terms of drugs that it'll be basically crazy. Any other questions, or did we kind of?
I think did I overwhelm everybody?
I think we may have done that.
Well, hopefully, I've convinced people to quit the processed food, or at least greatly eliminate it, and eat your seafood and your veggies, or your organ meats, whatever you can do.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing that I'd like to say, Rachel, what I really love about you and how you work is you literally get down to the basic level. You get down to the detail level. And when I do consultations, for instance, I only have, for example, a certain amount of time to spend with a person, and we have to cover a lot of stuff, medications, weaning of the drugs, labs, things of that nature. There's a lot of aspects and factors there. So that is why, and I'm just going to say this out loud, I'm so grateful to have Rachel here, and it's an honor. Because when I talk about healthy lifestyle, it takes follow through. It takes it's
easy to say.
It's easy to say.
A lot of people need guidance on and accountability on how to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Personally, because of you, and I'll just say this directly. Rachel is my personal coach, and so wonderful.
Like to make him
wonderful.
Suffer. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, getting better by the day. Yeah. So we got a couple of comments or questions. So what are your thoughts on hydrogen?
On breathing and drinking hydrogen.
I think we're talking about hydrogen reactive species. In other words, probably refers to. I'm going to make an assumption here. I hope this is the right assumption.
Yeah, because I feel like a piece there.
Yeah, we're missing a slight clarification there. But there's people who do, for example, H2O2 or hydrogen peroxide, and this is a thought on basically antiviral, cleaning out the system, taking care of the free radicals and things of that nature. Hydrogen peroxide in the right amounts and in the judicious use, I think I would strongly support that.
Yeah, I think, and I actually worried about that when I put that in the slideshow about hydrogen peroxide. I was worried that may confuse people because it has benefits to doing different things, different uses. So I wasn't necessarily saying hydrogen peroxide is a bad thing. And just that one particular scenario, you want it to be neutralized.
So basically, and let's talk about the radicals, free radicals. Free radicals in general are the things that cause damage in the body. But in some circumstances, for example, in a clinic, we have something called intravenous ozone and vitamin C. And we use intravenous ozone as an O3 molecule. That's another example of a reactive species that only lasts a couple of seconds and is safe for the body tissues, but is not safe for the pathogens and cleans up lots of other stuff. So for that reason, we absolutely love that in either any kind of disease state or any kind of a stress state. But at the same time, in the long term, you're better off. The best thing I should say is to keep the reactive species to a reasonable level.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know people use it as a nebulizer, the hydrogen peroxide and stuff. I think that can be fairly effective. That
can be very good. And if you're having any kind of upper respiratory, you want to do things without antibiotics, it is certainly possible and plausible. And by the way, antibiotics, they can mess up the gut. They can mess up the hormones. They can mess up,
your body, period.
Yeah. We're not saying never take them, but if there is a way to avoid, if there's an alternative, use the alternative. Yeah.
Yep, whether it's topical or something that you drink or eat or supplements. But the bottom line is, what is the number one reason for the antibiotics? Immune system that is under attack or not doing well. So at the same time, make sure you strengthen the immune system.
Yeah, give it the tools that it needs. That's why nutrition is just so important to me, because
essential.
Yeah, it is essential. It's essential to everyone. If you have the right tools, your body can do its job because it's brilliant and it knows how to self-heal.
Thank you. You know, I always say, and I'll keep saying this, is that we're not smart enough. I'm not smart enough to be smarter than creation.
I would not say I am either.
Yeah. So, to me, it's in other words, and I know there's a lot of molecules that are created by the pharmaceutical industry, and some of those molecules are very helpful under certain conditions. But in general, if we look at nature, if we look at the natural pattern, the blueprint of what was the creation, how it was created, and understand that, and this is what we do here. And we're not here to redefine or reinvent nature, but we're here to understand nature
and support it.
And that is the difference. That is the difference.
Yeah. Okay. I think
we are pretty much in a good place. Yeah. If there's any other thoughts or questions, we're happy to take that. But I know time is valuable, so please feel free to send us any messages, any information, any questions, and we'll address that at the next visit, next time. And let's keep an eye on this. So ethylene oxide. Let's make sure that we
we've got two
investigate
things for next
that.
Show. We're going to investigate that, and we're going to see what Dr. Shealy's thyroid results look like.
That's right.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, and we have wonderful. We have a question. How much tart cherry juice concentrate should you take? Now, Dr. Shealy, I think...
Actually, you need only 3 ounces.
Okay, so 3 ounces every day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Now, one other question.
And by the way, great to say hello to everybody. Love all the hearts out there. I'm sending you much love back. And thank you for staying with us. Your support means a lot to us. And as we bring forth the truth, light, and love as we know it in a holistic way, it's wonderful to have you. Question: is potassium iodide a good source for supplemental iodine? Now, Rachel, do you want to take that?
So you need iodine and iodide. And I think if we look at the iodoral, that's I think
that's more our favorites.
Yeah. So that one, or I don't know that we use that one here, but is it Lugol's?
Lugol solution, yeah.
Yeah.
We have both, actually. We utilize both. So let's talk about the supplement panel for a person who's got a thyroid condition. And Dr. Shealy, please tell me if you agree or not. But I would say very essential, a good B complex or essentials. Two of those, if you want to keep it simple. 4 of the youth formula, vitamin C, MSM, raises DHEA. That's essential. We talked about the importance of vitamin C in the thyroid. Vitamin D.
50,000 units once a week.
Mm-hmm. If over 130 pounds.
130 pounds or more.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And last but not least, magnesium. Magnesium topical. Plus either iodoral or Lugol's iodine, if you need to support the iodine.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you need to.
If you need to support the thyroid.
Yeah, because you also don't want to start. I feel like this is something you should generally do with guidance, because you don't want to start taking that and realize you have a really selenium deficient diet, because now the body's not in balance and it still can't do its job properly. So that's important.
And the one other thing that I would talk about and recommend is check out, in other words, when you're checking yourself out for health-wise, in other words, if your doctor is not, if the idea of the comprehensive panel, CBC, chemistry, and the TSH, and maybe hemoglobin A1C and nothing else, I really think you need a much more comprehensive evaluation, because there's so much pathology in this world today.
A lot to look at. Yeah.
A lot to look at, and all the disruptors, all the between the heavy metals, between the organophosphates, between all sorts of things that fluoride, chlorine, bromine. My God, it's a crazy world. So we can go about this in several ways. You can be either blind to it, which is not good. Number 2, you can be scared of everything, which is also not good. Or number 3, you can become aware and take charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That to me is the best combination. I hope I stayed on point there.
You did. Yeah. I think we're distracted because we see there's one more question.
Oh, please.
What is the brand of cherry juice that Dr. Shealy recommends?
Country Spoon.
Yep.
Oh, Country
Spoon.
Spoon. Okay. There you have it. Okay. Well, I think.
Y'all have a good one.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Hope you guys
appreciate
learned
you all.
Useful.
And I do want to say thank you for the viewers. We'll see you again next week, and we'll have a whole bunch of people on the radio program that we are going to be working with and bring you a lot of good information. See you next week.